Welcome to this news event to release a major new report about the NuScale Power Uamps small modular nuclear reactor project. You'll be hearing from two speakers today, and then we will open the floor for questions during the Q&A period. The Q&A period is for reporters only. If you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. For more info, a direct link to the report and news release related to today's news event is available in the chat window. As I mentioned, you will be hearing from two speakers today. First is Dr. M.V. Ramana, the Simons Chair in Disarmament, Global and Human Security and Director of the Liu Institute for Global Issues at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. He is a global expert on small modular reactors and has published widely on that topic. And then Dr. Edwin Lyman, the Director, Nuclear Power Safety, Union of Concerned Scientists. Let's begin with our first speaker, Dr. M.V. Ramana.
Thank you. Good morning to those of you here in the West. As you've heard, my name is M.V. Ramana. Among a small handful of topics, small modular nuclear reactors is a subject I've studied closely in several different countries. That's why I was pleased to be asked to look at the prospects for the municipalities in Utah, Idaho, Nevada, New Mexico, and California participating in the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, Uamps, small modular nuclear reactor project promoted by Oregon-based NuScale Power. I'm sorry to say that what lies ahead is risky and expensive if these municipalities do not avail themselves of the off-ramps and exit this project. Otherwise, they could end up being left holding the bag due to runaway costs, which could go up further due to the findings of the regulatory review carried out by the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission if the taxpayer subsidies announced by the Department of Energy do not materialize, and a host of other risks. My new report concludes, as has been true with other recent nuclear power projects in the US and in Europe, Uamps members could be on the hook for extreme cost overruns and project cancellation, making it a risky proposition for them to continue investing in an untested, first of its kind nuclear power facility. With nuclear power becoming more expensive in general, the dramatic increase in the construction costs of the NuScale project, the uncertainty in the outlook for electricity demand, and renewables and storage becoming increasingly cheaper investment in the NuScale project is simply not prudent. The key report findings include the following. Project cost. The estimated costs of the NuScale reactor design have been consistently going up. Just in the last 5 years, the estimated construction costs has gone up from around $3 billion in 2015 to $6.1 billion in 2020. Schedule delays. NuScale Power was supposed to deliver its first working small modular reactor in 2015. After a series of delays, it is now forecasting the first Uamps reactors in 2029-2030, unless there are further slowdowns, which are likely. Cost of electricity. Uamps power costs were originally projected at $65 per megawatt hour and then reduced to $55 per megawatt hour. But other utilities have indicated that NuScale SMRs would cost somewhere in the range of $94 to $121 per megawatt hour. Even if the Uamps NuScale electricity production costs are correct, they would still far exceed the cost of renewables, which are moving in the opposite direction. A renewables portfolio could be up to 60% less expensive than the Uamps NuScale project. Nuclear waste. This will be a problem for NuScale too, because just like large reactors, the proposed NuScale reactor design will produce radioactive waste of many kinds. The problem could be even a bit more acute. Proposed reactor designs like NuScale will produce more, not less, nuclear waste per unit of electricity they generate. The report I'm issuing today also highlights the changing nature of the reactor's design, which is a recipe for further increases in costs. The considerable amount of regulatory uncertainty that still exists, and the rocky status of NuScale's parent company, Flower. I would conclude my opening statement by saying this. Uamps members may wish to consider ending their pursuit of small modular nuclear reactors and avoid the sunk costs of a project that's very unlikely to achieve its target price or produce electricity at a cost competitive with proven alternatives. Pursuing cheaper, currently available solar, wind, energy storage, batteries, and energy efficiency would be a more reliable path for Uamps to shift to a carbon-free energy future. That concludes my opening statement. Thank you for your attention to my remarks. I look forward to taking your questions.
That was M.V. Ramana. Let's proceed to our next speaker, Dr. Edwin Lyman.
Thank you and good afternoon. Today, I would like to discuss some of my concerns related to the safety and security of the NuScale SMR design, as well as the problematic way in which the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or NRC, has dealt with emerging safety issues associated with that design. My organization, the Union of Concerned Scientists, is neither pro nor anti-nuclear power, and we don't have a position on the Uamps proposal per se. However, we do believe that if new nuclear plants are built, they should have clear and significant safety improvements compared to the current generation. That is, the one that brought the world Fukushima. We also believe that the NRC should license and regulate new nuclear reactors in a manner that ensures that the risks they pose to public health and safety will be substantially lower than the risks of today's plants. Unfortunately, by those standards, I think both the NuScale design and the NRC's approach to licensing it deserve failing grades. NuScale has built a public relations campaign around the idea that its reactor achieves a paradigm shift in nuclear power safety, and that according to its website, the reactor safely shuts down and self-cools indefinitely with no operator action. Although there was ample reason to be skeptical about those claims from the outset of the project, we now know, after revelations of fundamental design flaws that have only come to light in the last few months, that these claims are extremely misleading and possibly entirely false. Compare NuScale's claim with the following conclusion of Dr. Shanlai Liu, a senior nuclear engineer in the Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation at the NRC, in a July 6, 2020 report that Dr. Liu produced entitled Evaluation of NuScale Post-Emergency Core Cooling System Actuation Boron Dilution Events. It's a mouthful, but it actually represents a very serious problem. Dr. Liu's report, although it was presented at a meeting of the Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards of the NRC on July 8th, this report only became public 2 days ago, and this is the first it has not received any public attention till now. Dr. Liu wrote that it is the author's view that the NuScale reactor could reach fuel failure and prompt criticality condition for a wide range of initial conditions. Based on event analysis and identified modeling deficiencies, the author believes that the NuScale reactor will most likely experience core damage, even in the case without operator actions. Additional design changes are needed from NuScale to avoid catastrophic core damage and improve the safety margin. To translate, prompt criticality essentially means that the reactor, even shut down, could begin operating again, generating nuclear fission power, and experience a rapid power increase, potentially an unstable condition. That is pretty much the exact opposite of passive safety. Although this event wouldn't be as bad as the power excursion that blew the Chernobyl reactor apart, Dr. Liu does conclude the outcome could be catastrophic. Dr. Liu wrote this report to support his dissent from the NRC's staff decision to approve the NuScale final safety analysis report, and he isn't alone. Members of the NRC's Independent Advisory Committee have expressed similar concerns. Yet despite the serious nature of Dr. Liu's objections, the NRC staff overrode them and approved the NuScale FSAR on August 28th. Dr. Liu continues to non-concur with this decision. The danger posed to the public by the NuScale reactor, highlighted by Dr. Liu, is compounded by the fact that NuScale has sought a large number of exemptions from the NRC's safety rules, justifying them with the assertion that the design is so much safer than current reactors, it doesn't have to play by the same rules. This includes the design of the containment of the reactor, which doesn't meet the same standards as large reactors. It includes a smaller number of licensed operators to run this plant than the NRC ordinarily would allow. And perhaps most irresponsibly, NuScale does not think their reactor requires any off-site emergency planning to help prepare the public in the event something goes wrong. By eliminating these defense in depth levels, that is additional levels of safety to compensate for what you don't know about the fundamental reactor design, that is the opposite of what good nuclear safety practice should be. And especially if you have a reactor that's never been built, designed, or operated anywhere. So I would say to customers considering buying a NuScale plant, whether at home or abroad, they should not regard the NRC's design certification process as the last word, and they should take a hard look under the hood of these reactors themselves to look at these unresolved safety issues. Thank you for your attention.
That was Dr. Edwin Lyman. That takes us to the Q&A portion of the call. If you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. As a reminder, the Q&A period is for reporters only. If you are having issues with your own audio or the raise hand function, you may use the test-based Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. While we are waiting for our first question, I want to mention that a video recording of this news event will be available online at bit.ly/Uamps NuScale. That's bit.ly/Uamps NuScale, no spaces. All right, let's go to our first question from Nathaniel Johnson. Please be sure to enable your audio.
Okay, unmuting myself. Hi, thanks for this. On the increases in cost, I'm trying to figure out why those increases in cost are relevant to the Uamps people. Isn't this where you'd want to have the costs, rather than having those unexpected costs happening later, while past the point where the off ramps are possible, having those increases in cost ahead of that time, solving those problems now as opposed to when they're locked in.
Right. That's a good way to put it. I think it is better to know about these increases in costs now rather than after construction has started and after the point where Uamps members will find it harder to quit the project. That said, I think the important concern this raises is how these overall construction costs can go up while simultaneously claiming that the cost of electricity from Uamps NuScale project comes down, right? So a few years ago, they were talking about $65 per megawatt hour. Since then, the costs have nearly doubled, but they claim that the cost of electricity will be under $55 per megawatt hour. I don't understand how that's possible. There's no transparency here. So in that sense, it's good that we know of this increase in cost right now rather than later. But this is a good time for Uamps members to be asking hard questions and becoming skeptical of these claims.
Thank you.
Okay, if you have dialed in by telephone, you will be unable to ask questions during this live Q&A session. Please reach out to Whitney Dunlap at wdunlap, that's D-U-N-L-A-P, at hastingsgroup.com if you have a question you would like to ask after this news conference. Our next question comes from Amy O'Donoghue at Deseret News. Please be sure to enable your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. My question relates to Dr. Liu's report that was presented to the NRC. Why do you think it was disregarded if he had, these technical concerns about the safety of the design?
Well, I think that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is under tremendous pressure to make this NuScale design certification a success and to meet the schedules that they laid out years ago. And unfortunately, that pressure is forcing them to sweep under the rug or delay for later a number of hard issues that have only arisen in the last few months. This design has been under evaluation by the NRC since early 2017. And in fact, NuScale has been working on the design really since the beginning of the century. But these very serious safety issues were overlooked until early this year. And they are trying very hard to not have to address them at the design certification stage. So the NRC staff's overall conclusion is, well, yes, there may be these problems, but we think they only have to be addressed when an applicant actually tries to build the plant and applies for a combined operating license, such as Uamps may. That puts a lot of the burden on resolving these safety issues onto those applicants. In fact, it causes greater risk for them because if it turns out these require further design changes or other modifications, that may lead to other additional delays and costs of the project. So it's not in anyone's benefit not to resolve these issues now, but unfortunately, because the NRC has to stick to these artificial timelines to satisfy Congress and the industry, that pressure is leading to a very unfortunate situation.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay, so you're saying that the NRC knows that there's design safety flaws in a planned nuclear reactor project, but they're going to go ahead and just give it a thumbs up anyway and hope that they're resolved later? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. A lot of the issues have to do with hair splitting as to how long the reactor can operate without having operators actually having to take actions to stabilize the plant. So right now, the NRC staff's position is that as long as the situation is stable for 72 hours, then that does not have to be addressed in the design certification, but that will have to be addressed in the combined operating license by developing procedures for operators so that they actually have procedures to take actions to try to rescue the plant without making the situation even more unstable. And that's the way where it is now, because ordinarily if a nuclear reactor like water reactor has a loss of coolant accident and it's losing coolant, the main objective is to try to get water into the core from by any means necessary and as quickly as possible. And what the NuScale, what this design actually has shown is that because of NuScale's the passive safety design, it turns out that trying to put water into the reactor in the wrong way or at the wrong time could actually make the reactor more unstable. So the thing that you need to do to keep the fuel from overheating and melting could actually make the situation worse. And that is not good design. That needs to be addressed at this stage, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We want to make sure that reporters on the line have a chance to pose their questions. Again, if you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn. Also, we will have a video recording of the news event available online at bit.ly/Uamps NuScale. I am seeing a question here via the chat. So it's twofold. If this project and others like it don't go online, doesn't that in practice just mean more reliance on fossil fuels? The political reality is that there isn't sufficient support for rolling out enough renewables to really bring down emissions without much more nuclear. Isn't reactors like this not coming online going to make climate change more of an ongoing and worse problem?
Okay. So let me try and answer that. I think if I had to characterize the political reality, I would characterize it exactly the opposite way. There is actually not going to be more nuclear coming online, whereas in fact, if you look at the data, there's a lot more renewables coming on every year. That's close to the majority of the most of the investment in the energy sector at this point is going into renewables, and also even into renewables plus storage at this point. So trying to invest in nuclear is probably going to be a distraction from the growth of renewables rather than the other way around.
Okay, excellent. I'm seeing that we do not have any further questions at the moment, but I am seeing another question from Nathaniel Johnson at Grist. So we'll have a follow-up from him first.
Yeah, since there's the opportunity, I'll ask. When you talk about the cheaper possibilities with renewables and storage, can you talk about what are the analyses that you're referencing, and are you talking about 100% decarbonization with that?
Yeah. So there's a number of different studies, and each of these studies are necessarily local and specific to specific geographies. So one solution is not going to work everywhere, but there's enough number of studies at this point to make us understand that in countries like the United States and Canada, where I live, there are ample renewable energy sources to be able to manage that. I have personally done analysis on the province of Ontario in Canada, which has the highest proportion of nuclear power plants in the country. 18 of the 19 reactors in Canada are located in Ontario. And there, my study showed that over the next 10 years or so, if Ontario were to phase out all its nuclear power plants, it could in principle run its grid on 100% renewables, and that would be cheaper. The reality also is that the current system is so far away from 100% renewables that many of the problems that people typically identify about renewables, namely the intermittency of renewables.
Okay, looks like we have a small holdup here with Ramana's video. Going to give others a chance to Edwin, did you have anything you would like to add to that?
Yes, just I see Mr. Blaine had a comment in the chat box about Unit of Concerned Scientists. It's not correct that we oppose the Uamps project. As I said at the beginning of my statement, we're not part of any coalition that is fighting the project, nor do we have a relationship with the Hastings Group. My participation here is strictly based on my own technical and safety concerns about this reactor design, long-standing concerns. So that's the extent of my involvement here. We certainly would welcome new, safer nuclear reactors, but as I said, I don't think that the process we're seeing here today is going to get us to that place. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I believe that is all for today. We want to make sure you know where to get more information following today's news conference. To connect with any of the speakers you have heard, you may get more info by contacting me, Whitney Dunlap, at 703-229-1489. And again, a recording of this news event and the related media materials will be available online at bit.ly/UAMPS NuScale. That concludes today's news event. Thank you very much.